could I invite you to be seated for a moment? We continue our series of reflections by our parishioners, and I invite Paul Fitzgerald, who's a cantor, a lector, member of the choir, and member of the parish council, who's going to offer his words this morning.
Thank you, Father. This morning, I come to talk to you about the place of the Eucharist in my life. I do so as someone who is like each of you, a pilgrim on a journey of faith, seeking to know and experience God. My understanding and ongoing encounter with the Eucharist has been shaped by the Ignatian practices I first learned in college. One of these spiritual practices is to imagine oneself as being present at some episode in Jesus' life and ministry, and use this imagined presence as a way to understand and experience a particular aspect of God's love and saving grace. For me, an understanding of the centrality the Eucharist plays in experiencing God's love and salvation has come from imagining myself as one of the disciples who meets Jesus on the road to Emmaus. I ask you to take a few minutes and imagine that we are all present on that first Easter day's journey from Jerusalem to the village of Emmaus. The first thing to visualize is that we have undertaken this journey in despair. A week ago, we followed Jesus into Jerusalem and watched him enter the city in triumph. As disciples, we believed Jesus had come to Jerusalem to redeem and restore the kingdom of Israel and thus fulfill all of our hopes and expectations. Instead, we watched as Jesus was arrested, tortured, crucified, and buried. And today, we have heard a report that Jesus has been taken from the tomb. Now we are fleeing away from Jerusalem, which represents all of our disappointed hopes. As we walk along, a man who we do not recognize approaches and asks if he can walk with us. We welcome him to join us and continue on our way. The man asks us, "What are we discussing?" We stop and look at this man in despair. One of us asks if he is the only person in Jerusalem who does not know what has been happening these past few days. The man asks us, "What sort of things have been happening?" In amazement, we tell him about Jesus being a mighty prophet in deed and word, who we were hoping would restore and redeem Israel, but that the chief priest handed it over to the Romans to be crucified. We tell him that 3 days have passed since Jesus' death, and this morning some women among us went to his tomb and could not find his body. They claim they have seen an angel who announced that Jesus was alive. We also tell this man that others in our group went to the tomb and found it just as the women had described, but they did not see Jesus. After hearing this, the man looks at us with love and tells us that we are foolish and slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have spoken. He asks us, was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? We are taken aback by this. We then continue on our journey, and this man begins to explain to us all of the scriptural references to Jesus and his mission. As the man talks, we experience an inner sensation of joy and consolation, which we cannot understand or verbalize. As we approach our destination, this man prepares to continue on his way, but we ask him to stay and eat with us. We go into an inn and sit down to eat. The man takes a piece of bread, gives thanks to God, then breaks the bread and gives it to us. At once, our eyes are open, and we see that we are with Jesus, and we feel immense joy. But as soon as this recognition occurs, he vanishes from our sight. At last, we comprehend that this man who reached out to us in our hopelessness and despair, who taught us and consoled us, was Jesus. We tell each other of the burning in our hearts which we experienced when he was speaking to us along the road. We wonder how it is that we, who have sat at the feet of Jesus, who walked and talked with him and heard him teach, could not have known it was Jesus all along. We do know, however, that our despair and uncertainty has disappeared. We get up from the table and hurry back to Jerusalem. We find the other disciples and tell them with great joy that we have seen Jesus and he has made himself known to us in the breaking of the bread. As I have reflected on this gospel passage over the years, I have discovered 3 wonderful truths. The first truth is that during the course of our lives, we will often be on our own roads to Emmaus, full of pain, despair, uncertainty, and even fear. But just as Jesus found the disciples on their journey of despair that first Easter morning, he will find us and join us on our difficult and troubled journeys, offering guidance, love, wisdom, and consolation. This will be true if, even like those disciples, we do not recognize that it is Jesus who is our companion, our guide, and our comforter. The second truth is that the Eucharist is the greatest sign of Jesus' presence with us. Like the disciples on the road, we can hear Jesus' voice and teachings through the scriptures. We can even put ourselves in his presence through prayer, but it's only through the Eucharist that we fully recognize and encounter Jesus and completely experience his presence, love, and saving grace within us. The last truth is that when we receive the Eucharist, something happens within us. Like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, we too can be transformed by the breaking of the bread. I truly believe that after encountering Jesus through the Eucharist, the lives of those disciples was never the same. If we allow ourselves, we too can leave the table of the Lord different people. So as we approach the Eucharist, let us understand it as the source and summit of our faith. Like the two disciples, let us truly come to know Jesus in the breaking of the bread, and as they did, let us leave the Lord's table transformed in heart, mind, and soul. Thank you.